Okay, so when are we going to be able to let go of the steering wheel and have a nap legally, or watch Netflix going at 70 miles an hour? In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly when, and spoiler alert, it may be a matter of months. In this video, I'll be telling you when we can lawfully let go of the steering wheel and not get nudged by a Tesla Model 3 to keep our hands on it, when someone's going to get smarter in the UK, and when we're going to be able to watch Netflix going at 70 miles an hour on the Model 3 centre screen. Not to mention why Tesla owners may be the first to do it in the UK. I'll even cover how insurance works if your Model 3 is driving itself. Before we get into the when though, let's talk about the why. I appreciate self-driving technology has the potential to displace lots of people who drive for a living, but think of all the benefits to the overall population. Those that can't drive due to medical conditions could get out and see their friends and family more. Delivery of essential goods to people's doors could be easier. On a long commute, you can be more productive so that your journey can be part of your working day, spending more time with your friends or family. That's not to mention about making our roads safer. 85% of collisions that caused injury in 2018 were caused by human error. Self-driving cars could reduce that. Tesla have already shown that their autopilot system is safer than the human driver, with it having an accident on average every 4.5 million miles, as opposed to a human who crashes every 450,000 miles. By my maths, that makes autopilot 10 times safer. So with Tesla rolling out its full self-driving beta, which is enabling your Model 3 to drive autonomously-ish with supervision on city and residential streets, how's the legislation changing or catching up? And how close are we to letting go of the wheel and paying attention to other things than just the road? Well, turns out maybe very, very soon. But first, if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, as this channel publishes videos at least weekly on everything related to Tesla, which obviously includes self-driving developments and electric vehicles, including new software updates and features. If you do subscribe, let me know in the comments below with a little "I've subscribed" comment, and I'll write a big thank you back. So back to full self-driving, and I'm about to tell you when we'll be able to let go lawfully. The good news for us in the UK is that the UK government is aware of the economic benefit to being a leader in autonomous cars. They've already been hard at work working at the international level and the national level to reform regulatory legislation. So for example, it's been an influential member of the United Nations Economic Committee for Europe for the harmonisation of vehicle regulations to develop an international standard to delegate the dynamic driving task to the vehicle. Whereas at the national level, the government has specifically mentioned our ability to exploit the flexibility in making our own regulations due to being completely independent when we leave the EU. So effectively, the UK government has said they want to be a world leader in self-driving vehicles, get them on the road as quick as possible, and have the ability to make up their own regulations to make that happen. They even have a Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles team. What's even better is that having read through the consultation papers and the regulations, our Tesla Model 3, and in fact all Tesla models, are way ahead of the regulations, which is why we might be one of the first to do proper hands-free driving. So for example, some of the problems the consultation are anticipating with autonomous driving, Tesla already have the answer, or have built the tech into the car and it will be an over-the-air software update to comply with the legislation. Obviously, even if it's lawful tomorrow, the software isn't quite there for self-driving taxis. But I don't think it's far off no engagement on motorways. Imagine if it was legal not to be engaged while you're driving your Model 3 on the motorway and you could grab a 40-minute nap on your 2-hour drive. Well, surprise, because it might be happening as early as spring next year. Kind of. It's definitely the first step and will enable you to take your hands off the wheel whilst driving and do it legally. Gone will be those annoying reminders to touch the steering wheel in your Tesla Model 3. But there's a catch. It only applies to automated lane keeping systems, ALKS. For us Tesla people, that basically means autopilot, which comes free with every Tesla, not full self-driving. The official definition for the legislation is, it's a system, when activated by the driver, keeps the vehicle within its lane for travelling speeds of 60 km an hour or less, by controlling the lateral and the longitudinal movements of the vehicle for extended periods of time without the need for further driver input. Hands-free driving basically, but no lane changes. Annoyingly, the system has to monitor to check the driver is still paying attention, which is why most likely Tesla activated the internal camera to start developing that software ready for when the legislation comes into force, for which I have an exact date, which I'll tell you in a moment. Part of the ALKS legislation looks at driver availability and says the driver is classed as unavailable, i.e. not paying attention, unless 2 of these availability criteria are met. A driver exclusive input, so that would be us holding the steering wheel, eye blinking, eye closure, but I'm guessing they don't mean asleep, and also conscious head or body movement, all of which the Model 3 is capable of observing. Now, I know Autopilot can do it at faster speeds, but baby steps, people, baby steps. If it gets proven at the lower speeds, then it can be enabled at the higher speeds. And it might well be introduced when the new legislation comes into force anyway, at least in the UK that is. Remember I said the UK wants to be a leader? Well, this legislation was agreed in the EU when the UK was part of it. The UK is looking to take the ALKS legislation further. The government paper is already discussing higher speed applications on motorways. The ALKS regulations, which come into force in 2021, were agreed in the EU and do limit it to 60 kilometres an hour, or 37 miles per hour in the UK speak. And that's because it's aimed to be used in traffic jams or slow-moving traffic on motorways. In a government consultation paper that ended at the end of October 2020, they specifically mentioned about allowing ALKS to operate up to 70 miles an hour and are asking for evidence and views on if this should be allowed. The ALKS regulations also seek views on whether activities other than driving should be permitted, including Netflix. Okay, it said use of the infotainment system, but I read that as Netflix or YouTube, as we're lucky enough to have access to those on our 15-inch Model 3 displays. But it also mentioned replying to emails or text messages, or just using the phone, as long as you're in a position to take back control in a 15-second period. So probably napping isn't on the cards at the minute, but as I said, baby steps. Whilst I'm sure many of you are thinking, well, what happens insurance-wise if your Tesla Model 3 has a crash on autopilot? Well, I'm pleased to say the UK have already covered that one off with the Automated and Electric Vehicles Act 2018. That's not to say you can crash your Model 3 tomorrow on autopilot and this act will apply, as it only applies to vehicles listed by the Secretary of State. But I'm sure your Model 3 will get on this list when it becomes available. At the minute, I can't find any automated vehicles that the Secretary of State has approved, so maybe there just aren't any. I think these acts and regulations are a little bit of a work in progress. For example, the AEV Act states that an automated vehicle is one that doesn't need to be monitored, but the ALKS regs state you need to pay attention, which would imply monitoring. That would mean the AEV Act wouldn't apply, and therefore your insurance claims goes back to consumer and product law. Admittedly, amendments can be made to make these elements match up and work together, but I suspect there'll be a few test cases in the courts before that's completely ironed out. This act would help cover off that liability if your Model 3 crashed whilst on Smart Summon though. I'll explain in a second when Smart Summon should get all those features it has in America. But first, why do I think our Tesla Model 3 would be classed as an automated vehicle? Well, in response to what an automated vehicle is, the government has proposed two tests, a monitoring and a control test. The monitoring test says an individual does not need to monitor a vehicle if it can safely achieve the following. 1. Comply with relevant road traffic rules. 2. Avoid collisions which a competent and careful driver could. 3. Treat other road users with reasonable consideration. 4. Avoid putting itself in a position where it will cause a collision. And then finally 5. Recognise when it's operating outside its operational design domain. The control test statement is simply a vehicle is not being controlled by an individual when they're not in control of the longitudinal dynamics, so that's speed, acceleration and braking, and then the lateral dynamics, which is just steering. I think the Model 3 ticks all these boxes, no issues. The problem is that the government has identified that most autonomous vehicles may struggle to obey traffic rules. For example, how do you overcome Rule 144, which states you must not drive without due care or attention, when we're saying you don't need to pay attention to the road? Or Rule 270, where you must not stop on a carriageway, hard shoulder or slip road except in an emergency, when the ALKS regs say that if a driver hasn't been paying attention, it directs the car to stop in the lane, which is contrary to Rule 270. These are just some of the rules and the laws that will need to be updated to make AKLS possible and not cause the driver to be prosecuted when technically it wasn't them. I mean, these laws do date back to the early 1980s, so it's not surprising they don't take into account autonomous vehicles. So what happens next? Well, as I said, the consultation paper closed at the end of October with some specific questions the government wanted answering around the safe use of ALKS over 37 miles an hour and the infotainment system. Safety groups like the AA, the RAC will have their input, plus various scientific groups. Then further consultations are planned around the specific proposed changes in the legislation and the highway code by the end of 2020. Once all the relevant experts have been consulted and the evidence gathered, the legislation changes could be put forward for change. And when that happens, we might be able to take our hands off the wheel and not get nudged by a Tesla Model 3 every few seconds. So how long realistically will this take? Well, from what I can see, and I might be wrong here, but the ALKS regs could be coming into force in Europe on the 22nd of January 2021. But this will be limited to 37 miles an hour. So whilst we'll have to wait longer in the UK, it will mean we'll be able to use it in more circumstances. To pass a bill in government, they can do this in as little as a day if it's emergency legislation. However, in reality, we're probably talking a month or two. And even then, it might not come into force straight away, as it might need to allow time for people to adjust to it. In this case, there might be a need to educate drivers around the correct use, or they might make it the manufacturer's responsibility to pass on the specifics of the new law. It might just be that they want to send out public messages so that people don't freak out when they see us watching Blue Planet at 70 miles an hour or playing Tesla's version of Mario Kart. I think the government are keen to get this up and running as soon as possible. The government has shown its willingness to introduce autonomous vehicles by its interpretation of the 1968 Vienna Convention, which specifically says a driver must be in control of their vehicle at all times, which appears to go against autonomous driving. But the government's liberal interpretation of this statement is that it doesn't say the driver needs to be in the vehicle or defines control. So the government sees that a driver could be in control by simply choosing a destination and letting the car do the rest. So how does this all affect smart summon, and when will smart summon be allowed to be smart, and will those dangerous laws finally be ignored in the UK that make Autopilot disengage going around a bend that the EU has determined is too sharp for it, not the Tesla? Well, those rules are set out under Regulation 79 of the UN Vehicles Regulations 1958. Having looked at the changes proposed in the September 2020 Automated and Autonomous and Connected Vehicles Working Group, catchy name, the answer for Europe is a big fat nope. Nothing significant has changed. So what about the UK? And the answer is, it's not really clear. This is where I don't fully understand or pretend to understand the law if these are the regulations that's stopping smart summon from working. But it's looking positive. And that's because Australia have also signed up to the 1958 UN regulations, but are clearly not part of the EU. The UK signed up individually in 1963, so despite leaving the EU, we're still going to be part of these regulations. But if you look at Smart Summon and Autopilot in Australia, it can do everything it can in America, which makes me think we'll be able to have all these features in the UK. It may be that it's to do with approval to sell a vehicle in the EU, and to get that approval you need to abide by the 1958 regulations, so the UK could choose to allow the sale or even use if it doesn't abide by the regulations, which would explain the Australia thing. All in all, it's looking very positive for more self-driving features in our Tesla Model 3 as early as spring next year. Effectively, come January 2021, we're free to make the legislation we want to push for self-driving forward, and we've got a government that's keen to make that happen. Tesla owners are in a very strong position as the cars are well ahead of the competition. Safety and consistency is the next hurdle to overcome before robo-taxis are the norm, but I'll happily settle to be able to watch Netflix on a long commute on the motorway. Like I said at the beginning, this channel is all about Tesla's electric cars and the exciting future of the car industry, which I think Tesla is going to be at the forefront. So if you'd like to keep up to date, hit that subscribe button straight away. I post at least weekly to keep you up to date with developments, and if you do subscribe, say so in the comments and I'll say a big thank you back. Also, smash that like button if you enjoyed the little look into the near future of full self-driving cars. That's all for this week. See you soon, and thanks for watching.